On Wednesday, everyone, we talked about the French and Indian War, but we didn't talk about them. We talked about the War of Austrian Secession, but how it led up to the French-Indian War. It was the linchpin that brought us there. So today, we're going to be talking about the French-Indian War. But before I do that, I want to put a shout out. Oops, I shouldn't be showing you that picture yet. Ha, sorry. I'm going to talk to you about Historical Conquest. It is a game like none other. I mean, Christmas, it is going to be a great surprise for your kids, for yourself, for your siblings, whoever. This is a game that everyone can play. Adults, kids, everyone. Anyone that likes or has ever heard of Magic the Gathering, Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh!, any card game that's out there, this trumps them all. This literally is better than all of them. It's the number one. Now, again, this is my own opinion, but I can actually say this. This is the greatest game in history. Well, that's a little bit easy to do because Magic the Gathering, not about history. Pokemon, not about history. Yu-Gi-Oh!, not about history. None of those other ones, none of the other card games out there are about history. This one is. So it's the greatest game, I'm going to say card game, in history. There you go. So I am being 100% truthful, but you got to check it out. You got to try it out. It is so much fun, and you're going to enjoy it. Now, let's talk about the French-Indian War. Okay, so I said that we were going to do this. I'm going to lead you into this. Now, Monday, we talked about the War of Secession. This is where the two major countries that were part of that war, being Britain and France, were starting to butt heads. Where else were they butting heads? Well, they were butting heads in the New World. What was then called the Americas, which would then be called, because it's in the northern area, North America. Now, as you can see a map here, you're going to see all these are mountain ranges. Just in case you were wondering what they were. I was wondering what they were. These are all mountain ranges. This is Maryland, Pennsylvania, and such. Now, what you don't see in here, and if I could actually zoom into it, but I can't because it's a low resolution image, is you'd see Fort Duquesne, something like that. Let me give you a better picture. Okay, so let's zoom into this picture. In, let's see, 1753, the French expanded their territory, coming down from the north and coming more into the British area of the colony of the British territory. I mean, there's no really way of putting it because there's no real name to it. It wasn't in the 13 colonies. They were outside the 13 colonies, but they were coming more into what the British said was their land. So late 1753, 5 years after the War of Secession has ended in peace. So they're done out there. But over in the New World, there's a lot of contention. So France is bringing down their troops and starting up all these different forts. You have Fort Presque Isle, which probably means it was on an island. Isle being island. Then you have Fort La Boeuf. Sure. Then you have Fort Machault and Fort Duquesne. Duquesne, that was the word I was looking for. Now, here's the thing. Fort Duquesne did not exist. These ones were just being built. So, what happened? Virginia Governor Robert Dwinwitty. There you go. Governor Robert Dwinwitty sends Major George Washington to deliver a message to the French at Fort Le Boeuf. Sure. Fort Le Boeuf. Now, when he gets this message there, it's basically to tell them, hey, you're encroaching on our land. Please do not go any further. Stop what you're doing. The French said, we do not care what you think. What do you think we will do? Is stop? Never. Go away. Go away. Walk away in shame. Go away. We will not listen to you or your British people. That's right. We will not listen. You have no power over us. We have a fort, and we will shoot you down. Now, that is all well and good. There's only 3 forts. Okay, that's it. Sure. We're not going to do anything too much. Well, what happened 1754, the year afterwards, 1754, in March, the French established Fort Duquesne. Ah, yes. One more fort in our hat. Put another feather in our hat. Because we know we like feathers in our hats. Yes. Yes. So they have this another fort taking over more of what the British considered their land. And what did they do with these forts? Well, a lot of them were trading posts that were forts to secure the fur trade from that area. Again, after you trap every animal in a certain area, they're going to run out. So you're going to have to expand and expand and expand and grow your influence. Well, by growing your influence, ultimately you're going into someone else's territory, which was not the British per se, it was the Native Americans. And I can say Native Americans because the Americas were actually established. So Native Americans. Now, they don't like this. They're like, wait. You can come in here as long as we have alliances. Means you have to actually serve us just as much as we can give you land to serve yourself. So they said, sure. So they start up these alliances with the Native Americans that are in the area. Mostly the Algonquin. And now the British actually had another group that they supported, and that was the Iroquois. Again, much like the British and the French, butting heads, stealing land, all these different things, battles. The Algonquin, which was a confederacy of different tribes, and the Iroquois, which was another confederacy of different tribes, were all siding with different sides. Now, the British, May 28th, 1754. George Washington is now, told you, I'm going to have cough or I'm going to have issues with my throat. There we go. Gotta get some water. Loosen up the lungs. Loosen up the esophagus. Yes, okay. George Washington, now a lieutenant colonel, leads a group of Virginia militiamen and their Native American allies to ambush the French scouting party. Now, this is because they were expanding still. They were still expanding. Now, the one that was actually leading them was led by, his name was Ensign Joseph Coulon de Jumonville. So, a very long name. But they were trying to establish another location. So this is now Uniontown, Pennsylvania. So they're in the Pennsylvania area. And they are growing their establishment. It's actually a little bit lower than Fort Duquesne. So they're basically creating this wall so the British can't expand west. What do you think the British is going to say to that? No. Heck, no. So General Washington, sorry, not General, Lieutenant Colonel George Washington and his militia and Native American allies come in and attack the scouting party. Now, they meant to hold them, to pressure France not to go any further. But something happened. They're not quite sure exactly what happened. This is what they called the Jumonville Affair. And this is basically what happens is, after taking them, several of Washington's men or the Native American allies come in and kill them all. So it was supposed to be a diplomatic mission, supposedly. The scouting party that they thought was a scouting party was supposedly coming down with a letter to tell Washington, basically telling them their part and how they're going to continue. And to make peace with them. Well, because of this opens a skirmish which then leads to the French and Indian War. So let's talk about linchpins. Okay, so you have the War of Succession. Before then, there was a moderate peace in Europe. Now, France and Britain were always against each other. Spain and France were also against each other for a long time. France sided with the Ottoman Empire during the Age of Exploration. Spain did not, and so they were always fighting after each other. I mean, there was all these different battles, but for a moderate time, they actually had some peace. With the secession, actually with the death of Charles VI in the War of Secession, all of a sudden everyone started fighting again. Again, they were going after the Holy Roman Empire throne. They wanted to be known as the Emperor of the Holy Roman Emperor. And it went to Bavaria, but then a few years later, that person died and went to, and again, we'll go over all these things when we go over Middle Ages. But then it went to, back to Austria, Francis I, the husband of Maria Theresa, who was supposed to be the throned queen of Austria, but the other countries didn't like it. Now, this created a lot of tension, especially those that had colonies in the New World. Now, what happens if all of a sudden the French start coming over and trying to take over additional land? And the British are saying, you're boxing us in. We can't do this. There's no way. And they already told them, heck no, we will not stop our fort building. And even if it was a diplomatic mission led by Ensign Joseph, Coulon de Jumonville, didn't matter. Because there was so much tension buildup. So much buildup that was happening. And so what happened? Well, okay. So all these people died in the scouting party or diplomatic party. And this went back to the French. Who was a big instigator in the French's response? Well, it was actually Ensign Joseph Coulon's, I don't know which one to use. Ensign, Joseph, or Coulon? Okay, we'll just say Ensign's, it was Ensign's brother that sought vengeance. Didn't seek vengeance against the British. No, he was going straight for George Washington. He wanted him dead. He wanted him humiliated because by allowing the affair to happen, the Jumonville Affair to happen, this put a bad light on the family of Ensigns and his brother. So to bring back honor to his family, he had to humiliate George Washington. Okay, so what happens? July. Now, again, the whole attack on these people happened during, May 28th. And so between May 28th and July 3rd, the brother got word. And he says to the French, I am taking an army down here. I don't care if you stop me or not. I'm taking people down there. I'm going to seek revenge. And I'm going to take out Britain. The French were like, oh, please, go. Have fun. Yes. Take down Washington and the British. Take down that nasty little fort they built. Whew. Fort necessity. What a pity that it could be considered a fort. And to all the French out there, I am sorry for my bad accent. But, you know what? It is just fun to speak for the French accent. And butcher it. And I'm going to butcher everyone's accent. Sorry. I don't have that accent. I don't have the best ability to do it. I do have great voices. So, let's continue. July 3rd, 1754. Now, if you can actually see this. Whoops. This is Lieutenant Colonel George Washington in one of his amazing poses as a young man. He's actually in his late 20s, right, at this point. Now, Fort Duquesne is on basically a fork in Ohio of two different rivers that are coming in. We're not even going to go there. There's Fort Duquesne. And again, they're not attacking this. They're going to Fort Necessity. Oh, sorry. This is where Fort Duquesne looks right now. Okay, here we go. I want to show you how close these are. So, There's the forts I showed you before. There's Fort Duquesne. There's Fort Necessity. What in the world was Fort Necessity? Now think of its name. Fort Necessity. It's a fort out of necessity, right? Okay. So let me show you this. That's Fort Necessity. Now, this is the fort rebuilt and what it most likely looked like at the time, except for the fact that, I mean, the wood wouldn't be so old, but it was that poorly put together because they took it within the fort of necessity. And they fit all the people within either tents or within that barrack. And the forts actually get a line out the outside because unless they're being attacked, they really didn't need to be in the fort. Much like most forts during that time, the fort was actually not there for people to live in. The fort was there to secure people. And so they built the fort as fast as possible because it was at this point that they knew that the French were coming for them. George Washington was not an idiot. Even at the mid-20s, he was actually fairly experienced in many different ways, but not as experienced about keeping his prisoners safe. And again, we don't know exactly what happened because there's nothing actually written about it. No one spoke up to say what happened during that affair, during that time. Okay, so you have July 3rd, 1754. The French now attack with their Native American allies. Unless you are going into battle, you don't usually stay with your Native American allies. They usually go home and then get called up when they need to be taken up. So the British most likely didn't have their Native American allies there. So the French soldiers and the Native American allies came in and destroyed Fort Necessity and nearly killed most of the soldiers that were in there. Now here's the thing. At this point, George Washington is still alive. He's actually taken prisoner. He's one of the prisoners. And you got the brother of Ensign Joseph. Now, his name is actually in the curriculum. I don't have it in front of me because for some reason I didn't grab it. So they take over Fort Necessity, and Jumonville, actually, just call it Jumonville, was actually the brother, actually took Washington into custody. Now, did he humiliate him? Probably. One of the big things that he did was he made George Washington sign a letter saying that he assassinated his brother. Now, with it did not justify him being killed or being hurt. But it did also show that it was a defeat. It was an embarrassment for George Washington. Later on, George Washington, because it was written in French, said he didn't know what he was actually signing, but he did sign it in order to keep his men alive, the rest of them, because they were threatened that they would be killed if they did not sign the treaty or the letter. So after fighting in heavy rain, it took a few days. Washington did surrender, and this letter was written, and Washington signed it. All done, clean and clear. They're done, right? That's where they end. No. Because the French and the British are not going to secede. They're not going to give up land. They're not going to give up influence. So you have what we call the Braddock's expedition. Major General Edward Braddock's, a British officer from Britain. He was actually part of the War of Secession and moved to sorry, that was my cold talking. Moved to the colonies to help out there. Now, he goes back and attacks, tries to capture Fort Duquesne. So, leading an expedition to expel the French, and that's it. That's all they wanted. They just wanted to expel the French from this new fort that they just established. And the French had some other things to think about, or a response, a different response. So Braddock arrives in April 14th, 1755 in Virginia to begin recruiting troops. And these are both regulars and colonial militia, bringing them all together, Native American allies as well. Oh, and just so you know, when George Washington left, the Native Americans actually attacked a lot of the people as they were leaving, and the French didn't do anything about it. So for the Native Americans who took on the French when the scouting party was taken over, it basically revenge. And again, the Native Americans revenge for taking their lands, the British taking their lands. So yeah. Okay, so now Braddock is here in Virginia, recruiting everyone. George Washington serves as one of Braddock's aides. Braddock's forces comprises of 2,100 people, troops, men. They march from Virginia towards Fort Duquesne, and I'm going to show you this. And this is how far they get. So close to Fort Duquesne, but they don't actually make it. The French have their own troops, and they're going to be sending them back. So this is July 9th, 1755. So near Duquesne, Braddock's forces come together, and there's a huge fight. The French soldiers, the Canadian militia, and the Native American warriors all attack Braddock's forces. The results? Well, over 900 British soldiers and colonial militia are killed or wounded, while George Washington gains recognition for rallying the survivors and leading them to safety. Braddock, sadly, is mortally wounded and dies. So, and it's probably because he got shot and was mortally wounded that a lot of the troops said, I'm done. It was too much. So Braddock's defeat exposed British vulnerabilities in North America. And so this actually set up a second linchpin. That's right, a second linchpin. If it wasn't for the French-Indian War, most likely the 7 Years' War might not have happened. But the French-Indian War, this is not actually the French-Indian War. We have not gone to the French and Indian War. This would not actually happen for a few years, until the next year. So failure for Braddock and his expedition basically put setbacks for the British. It also empowered the French to say, ooh, North America is mine. Now, why am I making an evil accent? I'm not. This is just someone that's very excited. And it's my cold. Yes, it's totally my cold that's making me do evil French accents. But anyways, so 1576 is when the British and French would officially declare war. But not just in North America. Basically all around the world. And to end this, I'm going to actually talk to you about where this war actually was. So we're talking about North America, of course. But we're also talking, and remember, there's allies in here too. Spain is an ally of France, coming back from the War of Secession. But it doesn't really say, they're not going to fight battles for the French. They're going to do other things that are underhanded and such. So we're not going to go there yet. But so what else happens? Okay, so you have French being empowered. So they start going after the British assets, and the British being disgraced to some extent, insulted, not happy with the French, start to take over other lands around the world. We're talking about battles in India. You have the West and East India companies. Oh, wait a second. You have the Dutch, the British, and the French, all having their different French India companies. So you have a lot of fighting that's happening over there. One thing that's interesting, and we'll mention it later on, but India is actually in a battle as well. Regional battles. They're having a ton of regional battles trying to create India. Now, they're not trying to create India. They're trying to create their own lands in India. And that's going to create a larger spin there. So we're going to get to that in a little bit. Then, what about, let's go to Africa. Africa, same thing. So you have Asia. You have Africa. Slave trade. A lot of things happened during that time. Now, we're not going over medieval times, so we're not going to go over the 7 Years' War completely. We're going to keep a lot of it to the French Indian War, but I want you to see everything that's happening during this time. This is why the French and Indian War was the first World War, even though it's not called the First World War. So a lot of things are happening in the Mediterranean as well. But all of these things basically empower other countries as well. So other countries are going to come in and take advantage of this. The Barbary pirates. Who are the Barbary pirates? So North Africa. You have a lot of Muslim countries that are up there. And in order for people to sail in the Mediterranean, you either had to have a big army that no one wanted to fight, or you had to pay tribute to these northern countries in northern Africa. So the Mediterranean is starting to have a lot of turbulence created by this war, the 7 years war. You have it happening in Europe. There's going to be a ton of wars that are happening over there. And the last one is down in the Caribbean and South America. There's going to be a lot of wars happening there, British and French, but also Spanish, because the Spanish have territory down there, and they're not going to give it up. You have the Portuguese. They have territory down there. They don't want to give it up. So, again, a entire world war. So this is something interesting, because before I started studying the French and Indian War, and before I started editing the curriculum that's going out for the French and Indian War, I had no clue about the French and Indian War and why it was so essential. Actually, here's another one that's very essential. We don't talk about 1812, the War of 1812. Essential. We're going to be talking about that. Not right now, though. We're going to continue with the French and Indian War. And I can't wait to tell you more about this. So next Monday, we're going to be going over the diplomatic revolutions and the alliances that happen. Now, the reason why the war doesn't actually happen like right away, because the word gets back to France and British and Great Britain fairly darn quick. It only takes a few weeks by ship to get over there. So people actually know about it. But they wait nearly a year before declaring war. Why did they do that? Go back to Mondays. What did they do for the first year of what should have been the war, before the war is actually really fought? There's something that's essential. When you start a war, you want to have something, and that's called alliances. You want to have friends on your side. You want to know who your enemies are. And if people are going to stay neutral, you want to know who they are as well. Because one, you're not going to drag them into it. Two, you're going to try to keep them neutral. You do not want them to side with the other people, the other group. And if somebody hurts them, you want to be able to get them over to your side. So the War of Alliances is now underway for the 7 Years' War. Who's going to win on those alliances? We're going to go over them on Monday. And then we're going to be talking about the global conflict. We're going to be talking more about what I just shared with you and going over all the parts and pieces so you can actually see the global conflicts that are going on. Now, until that point, come back tomorrow, hear more about the end of Egypt. This is our last day of the ancient Egypt that we're talking about. We talked about the Roman influence last time, but now we're going to be talking about something else. This goes a little bit outside of ancient times because this is around the 800 AD period. And this is where what happens? You have caliphates growing. You have followers of Islam taking over Egypt. And we're going to share with you how it happens, why it happens, and everything to go with it. Thank you so much for joining us on this great Adventure Box podcast. We will catch you next time. Take care, y'all, and have a great day. Bye-bye. If you have any comments or questions, add them to the comments below. Otherwise, we'll see you tomorrow, actually. Take care. Bye.